Good afternoon. Welcome to This Week in Turkey. A high-speed train crashed in the capital city of Ankara yesterday, killing at least 9 people and injuring 47.
Reports quoting local officials said the high-speed train had collided with another train, then an overpass. The crash happened at about 6:30 local time at the Marşandiz railway station, around 8 kilometers away from Ankara's main station. At a news conference, Ankara Governor Vasip Şahin said the train was traveling from Ankara to the southern city of Konya when it collided with a locomotive inspecting tracks at the station. 3 train drivers were among 9 people killed in the crash, according to Transport Minister Cahit Turan. The state-run Anadolu Agency reported that 206 passengers were on board the train. 3 of the injured are said to be in a serious condition. A large number of emergency workers arrived at the scene shortly after the collision, which occurred in snowy conditions. The Ankara State Prosecutor's Office says it has launched an official investigation into the cause of the crash. In a tweet in Turkish, the Unions of Chambers of Turkish Engineers and Architects quoted its chairman, Yunus Yener, as saying that signaling problems had been flagged on the line for some time. It added, "The accident is murder." In July, 24 people were killed in Turkey when a train traveling from the northwestern town of Kapıkule en route to Istanbul derailed.
President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said on Wednesday that Turkey will start a military operation in the east of the river Euphrates in northern Syria within days.
The move, which Erdogan said would focus on territory to the east of the Euphrates River, risks confrontation with the United States and could further complicate the already tense relations between the two countries. U.S. support for the Kurdish People's Protection Unit YPG forces has strained relations with Turkey, which considers the YPG to be a terrorist group and an extension of the PKK. We will start the operation to clear the east of the Euphrates from the separatist terrorists in a few days, Mr. Erdogan said on a televised speech on Wednesday, referring to territory held by the YPG. He did not specify which areas would be targeted, but it would be the first time Turkish troops have moved east of the river. Our target is never US soldiers, he added. There are some 2,000 US troops currently in Syria, many of them stationed in the north. This step will allow for the path to a political solution to be opened and for healthier cooperation, Erdogan also said. Turkey has launched 2 military operations against the YPG in Syria since 2016. YPG currently controls large territories in the northeast of Syria on Turkey's southern border.
Joining us today to talk about Turkey's possible military operation in northern Syria is Amberin Zaman, a senior correspondent with Al Monitor. Good afternoon, Ms. Zaman. Welcome once again to This Week in Turkey.
Thank you.
So as we've just heard in our previous news video, President Erdogan has announced this week that within just days, Turkey will start a military operation in the river in the east of the river Euphrates in northern Syria, which is a Kurdish-held region. And some analysts view this move not as a foreign policy move, but rather as an attempt to influence domestic politics, specifically ahead of the upcoming March 31st local elections in Turkey. What do you think? How realistic is a possible military operation by Turkey in northern Syria?
Well, first of all, I don't think that the two are mutually exclusive. You can, have a foreign policy that at the same time serves what you believe to be your national interests, while also, having that foreign policy garner votes in an election for you. So I don't think that you have to, choose between one or the other when analyzing the current situation. And certainly the pattern so far has been for Turkey to make these threats and to actually act on them. So we have no reason to disbelieve President Erdogan when he says he will take military action east of the Euphrates River. What we don't know is what exactly President Erdogan is telling the Americans that needs to happen for him to not engage in such action. What we do know, though, however, is that Turkey insists that the YPG withdraw from Manbij, withdraw from its administrative structures as well as its military structures. And so far as Ankara sees things, it hasn't happened. That has not happened. And this has created immense frustration in Turkey and, of course, deepened the distrust felt in Ankara for Washington. Because as we all know, back in 2016, when the YPG took Manbij with the help of the US-led coalition, there was a firm pledge on the part of the Americans that once the town was secured, the YPG would then withdraw. And that has not happened.
So, Ms. Zaman, let's continue with Erdogan's remarks in the speech where he mentioned that Turkey would start the military operation in northern Syria. In the same speech, Erdogan also emphasized that the ISIS threat, the Islamic State threat, was now over in Syria. And as we all know, the ISIS threat is seen as the main reason for US military presence in Syria at the moment. So what do you think? Is the ISIS threat really over in the region?
Well, it depends on how you characterize that threat. I mean, of course, ISIS has lost the majority of the territory that it held. The so-called caliphate that it had established has crumbled, and now it's down to, you know, several thousand fighters who are holding out in the Middle Euphrates Valley, where the US-led coalition, together with the YPG SDF, is fighting them and trying to drive them out of there. But as we've seen, certainly in recent months, ISIS continues to be a threat. It continues to kill people. It continues to carry out terrorist acts, both inside Syria and in Iraq as well, and particularly in Iraq, in fact. So in that sense, you know, the counterinsurgency aspect of this outfit is still alive and kicking. And let's not forget that ISIS also has a network inside Turkey itself.
Again, continuing with Erdogan's remarks from that same speech, he has said that the US will never be a target, but it's known that the SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces, which controls the region, receives heavy weapons from the US, and its main component, the People's Protection Units, YPG, the Kurdish YPG, is a key US ally in northern Syria. And in a setting as such, what would the consequences be, in your opinion, if Turkey, in fact, carried out an offensive against the Kurdish forces?
Well, obviously, I think when President Erdogan says he would never target US forces, he actually means that. The United States and Turkey are NATO allies, and it's unthinkable that, you know, the US or Turkey would attack the other. Having said that, though, of course, as you pointed out, there are US forces in the region, and there always exists the risk that in the course of any Turkish military operation, that you would have American forces in the area who might accidentally, fall in harm's way and get hit, killed, wounded. That risk always exists, obviously. And what that would entail, of course, at this point we'd be speculating, but clearly there would be a rather strong US response if US military forces were hurt in any Turkish operation.
Mm-hmm. Given that military presence in Syria is a crucial US objective at the moment, how likely is it for the US to withdraw its troops from the east of the river Euphrates in the event of a Turkish offensive?
I do not believe that the United States would withdraw its forces from Syria if Turkey were to mount an offensive. Also, I don't think that any Turkish offensive at this point would be on a scale that would require that anyway. I think we're looking more at the sort of border areas, and what Turkey said is that it wants the YPG removed from its borders. So, if they move far away enough from the borders, that might satisfy Turkey. I don't know. But having said that, I don't really foresee the United States leaving Syria just because Turkey is attacking that particular strip of border territory.
Finally, let's conclude with a report that came from Sputnik, Russia's Sputnik news agency, just a couple of hours ago today. The report said that Moscow is right now in contact with the involved parties regarding a possible Turkish operation east of the Euphrates River in Syria. And the same report said that Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov has called on everyone to be reasonable. I quote, "After all, we believe that dialogue and political methods are better than an armed conflict, war, and destruction." How would you evaluate this statement?
Well, I mean, it's very clever of the Russians to sort of insert themselves into this issue and to present themselves principally, I would think, to the Kurds as some kind of protectors. And the message being one of, you should be really dealing with us, not with the Americans. We're the guys who can actually help you. And as you know, the Russians are very unhappy, as is the regime and obviously Iran, about the continued U.S. presence in Syria. And they see the Kurds as, enablers of that. The fact that they continue to partner with the United States makes the Russians very unhappy. And so obviously they'd like to exploit this situation to somehow send, as I said, this very clear message to the Kurds that, hey guys, if you really don't want the Turks to attack, well, this is what you need to do. Because I think that the subtext of all of that, and it's clearly something I think the Kurds themselves are worried about, is that the Americans would not necessarily rush to their defense. They would certainly put themselves out of harm's way, but it remains unclear that they would rush to the Kurds' defense if Turkey were to attack, because so far they have not. In Afrin, obviously, that's an area that's controlled by the Russians, so it wouldn't be for them to intervene. But when Turkey entered Jarablus, for instance, back in August 2016, the Americans were okay with that. They, in fact, helped because that was also an operation that was directed against ISIS. But equally and fundamentally, it was one to interrupt Kurdish plans to connect their cantons west of the Euphrates with Afrin. And the Americans allowed the Turks to insert themselves in a significant and conclusive.
There's been a problem with our connection, but thank you, Ms. Zaman, for being with us today. We were joined by senior Al Monitor correspondent Amberin Zaman, who answered our questions on Turkey's possible military operation in the east of the Euphrates River in northern Syria, and continuing with our next news video now. The main opposition Republican People's Party, CHP, and Good Party have agreed to cooperate in 21 metropolitan municipalities for the upcoming local elections after a month of negotiation talks.
As you may know, the challenges of cooperation are as clear as day. Our agenda consists only of Turkey. Turkey must keep up with contemporary civilization. Thus, we have worked for the welfare of Turkey without letting any personal engagements intrude, CHP leader Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu said at a joint press briefing he held with Good Party leader Meral Akşener after their meeting on Wednesday evening. The CHP Good Party alliance will instill hope in Turkey, Akşener said. After the negotiation talks, the two sides finally agreed to endorse the CHP's candidate for the three biggest cities, capital Ankara, Istanbul and Izmir, and the Good Party's candidate for the western province of Balıkesir. In the southern province of Mersin, both parties will go to the polls with their own mayoral candidates. They had earlier announced that the mayoral candidates of Good Party for Mersin would be excluded from the alliance. According to the agreement, the provinces where the CHP will present candidates are Southern Province of Antalya, Aegean Province of Aydın, Southwestern Province of Muğla, Northwestern Province of Tekirdağ, Southern Border Province of Hatay, Western Provinces of Eskişehir and Bursa, and the Southern Adana. The provinces where Good Party will nominate candidates are Balıkesir, the western provinces of Kocaeli, Denizli, and Manisa, the central Anatolian province of Konya, the Black Sea provinces of Samsun and Trabzon, the central Anatolian province of Kayseri, western province of Sakarya, and southeastern province of Gaziantep.
Istanbul prosecutors are seeking jail times up to 15 years for 5 Daily Sözcü journalists, including columnists Emin Çölaşan and Necati Doğru.
The indictment accuses Emin Çölaşan and Necati Doğru, along with Sözcü editor-in-chief Metin Yılmaz, online news coordinator Yücel Arı, and online deputy chief editor Mustafa Çetin, of aiding the armed terrorist organization FETÖ without being a part of its hierarchical structure. The journalists are accused of supporting the group through their writings in Sözcü. Well-known columnists Çölaşan and Doğru have been strong critics of the government throughout the 16-year AKP era. Prior to joining Sözcü, Çölaşan had been dismissed from Hürriyet Daily, where he had worked for 22 years. Meanwhile, the prosecutor's office dropped a separate probe into 5 other suspects, including Sözcü columnists Uğur Dündar and Saygı Öztürk. The same court is trying 4 others from Sözcü, including owner Burak Akbay, who faces 30 years in jail over terrorism charges. In May, it extended an arrest warrant for Akbay, extending the travel bans on reporter Gökmen Ulu and former managing internet news editor Mediha Olgun. The first hearing of the case will be held on January 18, 2019.
The Turkish Statistical Institute announced on Monday that Turkey's economy grew by 1.6% in the third quarter of 2018 compared with the same period of last year.
The economy expanded at 7.2% and 5.3% in the first and second quarters, respectively, according to data announced by the Turkish Statistical Institute on Monday. Calendar-adjusted gross domestic product in the third quarter of 2018 increased by 2.1% compared with the same quarter of the previous year. Seasonally and calendar-adjusted gross domestic product decreased by 1.1% compared with the previous quarter. Meanwhile, the Turkish Central Bank on Thursday kept its one-week repo rate, also known as the bank's policy rate, constant at 24%. Recently released data show that the rebalancing trend in the economy has become more noticeable, the bank said in a statement from its Monetary Policy Committee meeting. Price increases have shown a generalized pattern across subsectors, reflecting the movements in exchange rates, it added.
That's all from This Week in Turkey. Thanks for tuning in and hope to see you again next Friday at 5 p.m. Goodbye.